Hey guys, welcome to video 2 of Adobe. Last time I opened up, just want to show you again, the tools are on the left hand side. You see that. You can see that I have open my adjustments, my layers, my history. You can go up to window to the top and you will see anything that you want to open that you do not see here. For example, history, if history wasn't open, right? You can click on that. These are the three main important ones that you'll need for now. But again, you can just go up to window to see what is open or not open. Next, I want you to see that I have two images open up here. They are indeed DNG or digital negatives. I had showed you briefly, but we'll talk about it again. When you have images in Lightroom, you can use, it's very easy to edit them in Photoshop, right? You can bring them into Photoshop and edit them. And if Lightroom is open, once you close out of there, it'll show back up in your catalog. I showed you that in the first video. But for our purposes, I just already have these images open. And what I want to show you today is quickly the sort of the beginnings of working with Photoshop for our next project, which will be something called diptychs or triptychs. So the diptych or triptych is multiple images on the same piece of paper. And of course they have a relationship, they're connected. You are going to actually be photographing specifically, thinking about the diptychs or the triptychs, right? How they're going to connect. That could be in terms of a line, sort of, let's say, there's some sort of graphic element seen in both images that you want to follow through. It could tell a story. It could be a juxtaposition of things, etc. Again, we'll talk more about that in class. But there's somehow that you're choosing 2 to 3 images that relate to each other, and we're going to place them on a new piece of paper. So here I am in Photoshop. I have my images open that I plan to use, but I need to create my virtual piece of paper. I'm going to go up to File. I am going to choose New. You'll see the shortcut is Command N. You will see here that I already have some custom templates. Now, the piece of paper that we are going to create virtually will be 8.5 by 11. We do indeed have some paper that size, so potentially we will print if we get the time. But I want you to create an 8.5 by 11 virtual piece of paper for now. One thing I want you to notice when you come over to the right, and again, I already have these because I've made them before, but I'm going to redo it for you. When you come over to the right, I can easily type in, right, the name for my project or for the piece of paper that I'm creating. You will notice here I have width. It has inches. You can do inches, centimeters, etc. I have inches. 8.5 by 11. 11 is the longest side. I want my paper to be horizontal. Of course, that's an easy thing to fix, but I want my paper to be horizontal because my 2 images are vertical, and that'll make sense in a moment. But the width will be 11. The height will be 8.5. Resolution will be 300 because our end goal is printing, and that is the DPI or the pixels per inch that we use to print. Color mode RGB is great. That'll be defaulted to RGB. We talked about bits. We would like 16-bit, 32-bit. Our printers can't really handle 32-bit. That's even more colors. 16-bit is perfect. 8-bit is not enough colors, so 16-bit should be selected. Background contents will either be white or transparent. We're going to do white so you can actually see that it looks like a piece of paper. Color profile is important. It may default either to ProPhoto RGB or to the sRGB one right underneath it. This one is better for web. This one again is a little bit more intense than we need for our particular printers. Generally, Adobe RGB is pretty standard. Just understand that color profile is kind of how your screen, the colors that you work with, everything work with the printer output, right? So we want to get the best kind of color connection. What we see is what we get, that kind of thing. Next, we're going to hit create, and you will see your virtual piece of paper. I'm going to do Command minus, just so it gets a little smaller in my screen. So then I am going to make sure, well, first of all, let's go up to view. I talked to you guys about guides last time, right? I'm going to go down to a new guide layout, and I have 2 images that I want to place. So I'm going to have 2 columns, and you don't even have to have the rows, right? But I'm going to keep it there just to help me sort of guide what I need. And I'm going to hit OK. Again, these are virtual. They won't show up in printing. I am then going to go over to my first image. You see how I did that with my tabs. Now I want to show you something. Let's come up to image at the top. Let's scroll down to image size. Please note how large this image is. This came straight out of my larger DSLR camera. So it's 12 by 18. Resolution is great, but this is a very big picture. So I can indeed change both my images to a smaller size if I want. For now, I'm just going to hit cancel because I want to show you something else. While I have this particular picture open, I want to select it, to copy it, and then to paste it. How I select things when it's just part of the image, I'm going to be using some of these selection tools over to the left, right? We haven't, over to the left here. We haven't talked about those yet. I want to select the entire image. So you'll notice one of the choices up at the top is select, and then I want to select all. What you will see is, if I clip, right, that's something called the marching ants. You can kind of see it when I move that out of the way there, right? So the marching ants means it's selected. That's what we call it. We call them marching ants. Once it's selected, I can do things to it, right? Just like when you're using Mask in Lightroom. Right now, all I want to do is copy this. So after it's selected, I'm going to go up to Edit. You will notice there's Copy, and you will notice there's Copy Merged, which is grayed out. Copy Merge is something I would use if I happen to have layers in my picture. We'll get to that later. But I'm going to hit Copy, which is also Command C. I'm going to bring that over to Diptych 1. I can either go back to Edit, and you will notice there's a Paste, and or Command V. Please note, once I did that, Photoshop created a whole new layer for me. This is my paper. This is the image that I just posted or pasted. I can turn that off with the eyeball. Now remember how large my picture was. So that's too big, right? You will notice also it automatically creates these bounding boxes. I can grab those with my mouse, use the move tool to move that up. The move tool's over here, the very top one. Right? Now, I want you to notice the kind of movement, right, when I'm close to that guideline. I have this set up, right, that it's going to snap to my guideline. So that's just something to keep in mind. To get rid of these bounding boxes, I can hit Done. Well, I forget, newer Photoshop doesn't get rid of them, but that's okay. At least it's done transforming that. I'm going to go, that was my first picture, right? That was this one. I'm going to go to my second picture, I'm going to go up to select and all. I'm going to go to edit, copy. I could do Command C, obviously. I'm then moving to my diptych, doing the same thing over again. I'm going to hit paste. And again, it's too big. Now, please note, you can indeed change the size of the image, like I said, right? If you want to make sure that they're the exact same size, you can do that also with the image size. These are pretty close. Right? Can't really tell. Let's see if it'll get rid of that. Yeah. It's a little bit smaller. So if you wanted to ensure that they were the exact same size, you could do that in image size, and we'll talk about that at another point. While you have your rulers, you can use your mouse to grab and pull a new guide down, right? If I wanted to kind of make sure that these were at the same level, and they're not, right? Can you see that? So I could use my arrow key or move it up a little bit to match the same level. I can use that again, pull one down for the bottom. Oh, they're pretty close. Okay. Now, again, I want you to notice on the right, everything is in layers. I can turn on and off layers, right? That's really all we're going to talk about at this point with Photoshop. But please note, you can have bunches of layers. You can have masks on each layer. There's lots of different things one can do. For now, that's all I'm going to show you. And, oh, whoops, last thing. You can always go back up to view. You can always clear the guides, right? So you can take a look at what it's going to look like. We will talk more about, if you'll notice how close these are together, and that's part of what I wanted, right? Just a sliver of white between them so we understand that they're two different images. But part of creating a diptych or a triptych, if you have a lot of white between it, right, it's going to change how we look at the image. They're less connected. You see what I mean? They look more like just sort of two separate images. So just things to also ponder when you start to photograph or start to think about this project. And if you'll notice, I'm using the Move tool, and more recent Photoshop should, as soon as you sort of hover over it, it knows you're choosing that particular layer. If it kind of trips up on that, all you need to do is go ahead and select the layer that you want to move. Okay, that's going to be it for now.